Today, I'm going to break down exactly how I built an Airbnb business here in Australia that's now doing over $121,000 per month in revenue. Now, this is literally no fluff, no guru nonsense. It's just straight to the point, everything that you need to know. And I'm going to show you three main things that essentially got me from zero properties to where I am right now. So if you're kind of, sitting there wondering, does Airbnb arbitrage work in 2026, or you're trying to, secure your first property, this video is going to save you a lot of time, money, and also mistakes. So let's just dive straight into it. So there are three main areas that we're going to cover here. First one is going to be acquiring properties. Number two is property setup. And then number three is systems and scaling. I think pretty much every kind of successful Airbnb business, it comes down to these three things. And like from what I see, most people end up failing because they get stuck at this step here and they never actually get to see it through. So let's start here at acquiring properties. Now, just before, when I first got my first property, I didn't have, a real estate license. I didn't own any properties. I didn't have a huge amount of savings, but I knew one thing, right? I knew that you didn't need to own real estate to profit from it. Now, don't get me wrong. I think owning real estate is great, right? But like not everyone has $150,000 sitting in the bank. They're making $200,000 per year. So they are able to service a $700,000 loan from the bank and be tied to a 30-year mortgage. There are other ways to do this that require much less capital, being way less tied down, and actually generating monthly cash flow instead of this like negatively gearing asset, where people are losing money every month for years and hoping that, in 5 or 10 years from now, the property value is going to go up. And especially even now, right? Like with the new laws coming in with, negative gearing being slashed and the increase in the capital gains tax, it's a shitty situation for Australians, to be completely honest. But yeah, enough rambling about that. Let's just get back to the topic. Now, before we talk about how I actually got into my properties, let's talk about what actually makes a good property, right? So I think there's a couple of like different aspects to it, but essentially like a lot of people have this misconception that any apartment's gonna work, right? Like any apartment they get into, they furnish it, set it up, put it up on Airbnb, and they should be profitable. But that's completely wrong. There's so many little things that actually go into it that allow you to be profitable and allow you to actually do this at a high level, right? So just to name a few from what I believe a good Airbnb would have is one, strong demand. You want one that's people actually want to stay in that property, right? They want to stay in that area. A good location, right? So you should have nearby stations, supermarkets, things like that. Nearby attractions. So ideally you want it where like there are events going on. So like when there's like a Taylor Swift concert, for example, there's huge demand and you can actually ask for much higher prices. You want to look at the numbers, right? So you want to look at nearby properties, look at the data, and ideally it should have about a industry standards about 80%. And that's pretty healthy. So if the numbers are showing around that range, then that's pretty good. You also want it to be a building that is suitable for Airbnb. You want a building that might have other Airbnbs in that building. You're pretty certain that they allow Airbnb. That's a very crucial point. And then the last one is one that actually positively cash flows, right? The numbers actually have to make sense here and put you in a position where you're essentially like cash flow positive every single month. Now, what makes a bad property is usually poor location, oversupplied area, strict restrictions, low rates, average daily rates, and weak occupancy. So you really want to make sure you keep an eye on this and make sure that property that you are getting into is more onto this side than this, right? Now, once I understood what actually makes a good property, I started reaching out to agents, right? Now, honestly, when I first started, I got rejected a lot, right? But I kept going and going. I was making calls, sending messages, attending inspections, and actually building relationships, right? And eventually things actually started clicking because I realized that it was all about trust and relationship building in this space. And literally within 30 days, I had secured 5 properties and I had made $10,000 in my first month of doing Airbnb arbitrage, which is insane. To go from like $0 to 10,000 in 1 month and actually have a passive profitable business in 30 days is pretty unheard of. And the crazy thing is, like, I start to see this a lot with a lot of my students who follow the same strategy, right? Like Shoaib, for example, who literally secured, he's in Sydney, he's got 4 properties now. He understood how to build relationships with agents and how to get them on board. And now sourcing properties is so much more easier. He literally, I think he got 2 properties back to back, like within 25th of May and then 26th. So insane. And you can see like it's not just about acquiring properties, it's about acquiring really good properties. And you'll see here, like he got a booking for 3 nights for 2.4K. And that's like, he literally said it here, his rent is 3.2K. So rent's almost made on a 3-day booking. So he's literally got like 27 days to be all profit pretty much. Which is insane. If he's making that just off of a 3-day booking, when people get results like that, and they know how to build relationships, know how to secure properties, that's the beauty of this business model, right? Is that it's super scalable. Another example, Min, he secured his first property within 30 days. And you'll see this was literally yesterday, biggest booking yet, 2.8K for 10 nights, basically whole month's rent and bills paid off. So literally 20 days of pure profits, which, I'm estimating to be about a 5-6K profit just off of one property. Now imagine you had 5 or 10 of these properties, you'd really be printing. That's pretty much the first step of, acquiring properties. Now, the second one is property setup, right? So this is the second step. And I think this is where a lot of hosts leave money on the table. I remember one of my properties, wasn't performing anywhere near where I wanted it to. Now, instead of blaming the market, I looked at everything. Right? I looked at the photos, I looked at the furnishing, the listing, the pricing, the guest experience, and we made several changes, right? We upgraded the pricing, we upgraded the presentation, we improved the listing, we adjusted the pricing strategy, improved the photos, and almost immediately we saw a shift in our booking. And that's when I realized Airbnb isn't just about getting properties. It's about maximizing every single property that you do have so that it allows you to continue to build your portfolio in the right way, in the right direction. Now, here are some of the biggest things that I focus on. So pricing strategy, which is, dynamic, working on seasonal pricing, weekend, and also event pricing, and then furnishing strategy. So you really want to make the property stand out, almost like a hotel style, but also having that homey, giving someone an experience and having really high quality photos. Because the biggest thing here is you really want to make a very strong first impression, right? Because guests book with their eyes first, and you literally have seconds of them scrolling to be able to essentially capture their attention, stop their scroll, and get them to book your property. So literally a small difference in presentation can literally mean thousands of dollars in revenue over a year. For example, this is, the difference between a good Airbnb bedroom shot would look like and a bad one, right? You can see here, there's natural light coming in. It's clean, it's modern, it's well styled. There's nice bedding, decor, there's good lighting, minimal clutter, neutral colors. People look at this and trust that they're going to have a good experience. You look at this one, for example, there's no natural light coming in. It looks old. The linen is scrunched up. You'll see here, like the lights are turned on, even on daytime. It gives a really good impression. The colors are not matching. The artwork is super small. It just makes everything look very, very cramped, and people don't want to stay in places like this. Right? It almost just looks like a student accommodation. So you can see how big of a difference something like this can make to being the reason why someone books your property or not. Now, number 3 is systems and scaling. And I think this is where everything changed, right? Because when I had, 1 or 2 properties, I could manage everything myself. When it came to guest messages, cleaners, maintenance, check-ins, everything, I was able to do it myself. But like once you start growing, it almost becomes impossible, right? And that's when I realized that if I wanted freedom, I had to build systems and I needed to do it through automation. So this is where I started to really focus on getting virtual assistants, cleaner systems, focus on automated messages, SOPs, check-in processes, team management to make sure that the business runs even without me there. And I think now the business runs very, very differently from how I was doing it when I had one or two properties under my belt. Now I spend far less time actually like involved in the business and more time just working on the business. Like we literally have one of our students, Randy, who lives in Perth, and he decided that he wanted to run his properties in Melbourne. And mind you, Randy, he works in Fiverr, right? So like literally in the mines, super tough. And it's like one of those things where he's working 2 weeks on and 2 weeks off. So he literally has 2 weeks where he doesn't have access to his phone or properties and just relies on his systems, his teams, and his automations that we've instilled for him to be able to run his property pretty much passively. And by implementing our systems, he's literally still able to continue working while generating passive income and scaling his portfolio over time. So you can see listed his third property. It's already printing. It's getting, 59 bookings for 2.5K. It's good to see the almost like the power of automation because, this isn't a business where you have to be so directly involved in it, but it's a trap that most people fall into. And they end up creating themselves another job as opposed to creating themselves a business. And they get so involved in all the guest communications and the cleaning and the pricing that it almost feels like another job for them. And it becomes super hard to scale past their first property. But if you essentially have good systems, good automations, then one, you can scale. And it's not just about creating more money. It's about creating more freedom. All right. So you really want to make sure that you get to a point where you can work on the business and not in it. So what's next? Well, for me, we're continuing to acquire more properties, continuing to optimize, continuing to scale. The goal here isn't really just revenue, right? The goal is building a business that works without you being involved every single minute and every single day. And that's exactly what we focused on, right? And that's why our students have been able to essentially get insane results and build really good portfolios that are structured, designed well, priced well, and perform really well. You'll see another one of our students, Tui, 7-night booking for 4K, which is insane for a 2-bedroom apartment. She's in Brisbane, right? So you literally see like that's more than her rent paid off within a week. So she's already profitable. And then the rest of the 3 weeks are just complete profit. Another one of her apartments, a 1-bedder, 3 nights for 1.3K. So you can see how quickly, especially if your property is performing at the level that it should be, the results that you can get that allows you to then be able to scale your portfolio, be profitable, and actually build this into a business. Because the goal here is not to just have one Airbnb or 2 Airbnbs, right? If you really want to do this properly, you want to scale into 5, 10, 15, 20 properties and really get to that level of financial freedom, then you want to be making sure everything is done right from property number one. Now, over the past year, I've literally helped dozens of students build and scale their Airbnb arbitrage business. We have a proven system in place that allowed our students to be able to build a successful business and actually be profitable, right? So if you're serious about starting Airbnb arbitrage or scaling your current portfolio, I actually offer one-on-one coaching. So inside this program, you get direct access to myself, you get property support, property acquisition support, property analysis, deal analysis, research to make sure, you're getting into the right property. We've got weekly calls, one-on-one, as well as group coaching calls. You get access to, the exact systems, softwares, tools, templates, scripts that we use in our own portfolio is given to you ready to plug in and play into your own business, as well as being a part of a community of like-minded people who are all there serious, really wanting to build up their portfolio. And when you're surrounded by people like that, making results like this, it's only a matter of time before you're the next person to get results like that and build up your portfolio. So if that's something that you're interested in and you're serious about building a real business, willing to invest in yourself, then click the link in the description, book in a call with me. I'd love to have a chat and see if we're a good fit to work together. If not, and you were just sort of looking to get a bit more insight, some value into Airbnb, whether you're just starting or you haven't started and you're in your researching phases, that's also fine. Appreciate you watching, and yeah, I'll see you in the next video. Peace.